Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Munk Debates pre-interviews. I'm Rudyard Griffiths, your moderator tonight and organizer of the Munk Debates. For the next hour, we're going to have interviews with our various presenters on stage tonight. It's my real pleasure to start with Robert Reich. We know him as one of the big global thinkers on economic inequality. He's a professor at UC Berkeley and a former member of the U.S. Cabinet Labor Secretary under President Clinton. Robert, great to have you here in Toronto.
Well, thank you. Good to be here.
Let's talk a little bit about your sense of where America is at, the kind of political mood of the country that has produced this extraordinary election cycle. What is driving both the candidacy of Donald Trump, but also just this feeling of ill-ease that those of us north of the border sense about you and your fellow citizens in the United States?
Well, it's not just the United States. It's also, you see the same ill-ease or anger in Europe. It's growing around the world, particularly among working class, lower middle class populations who are working harder than ever and getting nowhere. And when you have that degree of economic stress and insecurity, a lot of these people are sitting ducks, very, very vulnerable to demagogues and demagogic pitches that blame them. I mean, whether them as immigrants or minorities, people of color, whatever. This is not new in history. Obviously, we've seen it before. It's a tragedy, but I think that's actually what is propelling certainly the Trump campaign.
So are you in any way sympathetic to note out the argument you're going to hear tonight from Laura Ingraham and Newt Gingrich, which is that the elites have failed America, that there is a crisis, and that the crisis has produced Trump? We may not like him, we may not like the things that he says, but he is somehow an authentic representation of a significant portion of your fellow citizens and their angers and also maybe their aspirations for the country.
Well, I think when you have this degree of anger, historically it goes in one of two directions, either authoritarian populism of the Trump variety, and that has caused endless tragedy in the world, or you get kind of democratic reforms. And hopefully, when the dust clears, maybe it'll take a year or two or three. Hopefully Hillary Clinton will be elected. But there will be energy and there will be momentum for the kind of fundamental economic and democratic reforms that need to be made. And I think the elites in the United States, if they haven't learned a lesson from the 2016 election, it's not just Trump, but also Bernie Sanders on the left, they may never learn it. I mean, this is absolutely evident that something fundamental has to change.
Now, you, like many Democrats, are rallying behind Secretary of State Clinton. You were a Bernie Sanders supporter, though. You were enthusiastic about his campaign. Talk to us about that. What the other alternative that won't be debated tonight, which would be, Bernie Sanders will make America great again. Do you think that's not going away either, the movement that he ignited?
It's definitely not going away. I think that's the most hopeful movement. And hopefully Hillary Clinton will be elected, and the Bernie Sanders movement and others who agree with Sanders will be pushing her in the direction of the fundamental reforms that need to be taken. I know Hillary Clinton very well. I've known her for 50 years. I have a great deal of confidence in her. And I think that she really does want to do the right thing. It is difficult, though, Rupert, politically, if you are in the center of power, and I have been very close to that as a cabinet secretary in Bill Clinton's administration, it's difficult to do anything if you don't have a public behind you, organized, energized, motivated to make things happen. And so I think that if Hillary Clinton is elected, the Bernie Sanders supporters and other progressives and others who want reform have a very, very important role to play.
Another argument you're going to hear tonight is that Hillary Clinton is the elite status quo candidate, that your preferred choice for nominee for the Democratic Party for President, Bernie Sanders, didn't win. And instead, the choice now is between an establishment candidate in Clinton versus something new. I think Gingrich and Laura Ingraham will say something authentic in Trump. You don't buy that?
Not at all. I mean, I think that the bigotry, the megalomaniac, the narcissism, the lies, the level of discourse, the legitimation of so much ugliness in America from the Trump campaign is extremely dangerous. And that's why I think the authoritarian populist strain that comes out of economic stress is something that could set back the cause of progressive change decades, if not more. I mean, it's a very, very dangerous phenomenon. Hillary Clinton will make change. I mean, her heart is in social change and progressive change. She has spent her life trying to do it. She will be portrayed as the establishment, obviously, by Trump. But as I said a moment ago, I think it's very important to understand that Trump's election would put back the cause of progressive change 70 or 80 years and would be very dangerous for the world. I think Hillary Clinton can lead a progressive movement if progressives get behind her.
Mm-hmm. You've made a terrific film, a lot of buzz around it on economic inequality. One of the factors of that debate has been trade and trade agreements and how these affect developed economies like that of the United States. This idea that the pie was going to get bigger from everybody, but maybe we didn't understand fully how big a slice each of us was going to get of that larger pie. How do you react to Donald Trump's, interestingly, non-kind of traditional Republican attack on trade agreements and their equity vis-a-vis the United States and the rest of the world?
Well, I understand it, certainly. I was there implementing the North American Free Trade Act. And at the time, I, among others, said trade is good, but we have to have policies in place to ease the transition of workers who are negatively impacted by trade to better jobs, because otherwise trade and its consequences can be very unfair. The winners will not compensate the losers will be on a downward escalator. But those policies never came about. So the problem is not trade per se, just as the problem is not technological displacement, which also is affecting many workers. The problem is that there are not policies in place in the United States, and I hope it's not presumptuous of me to say they're not really there as much as they should be in Canada, in Europe, in many other places, to help people through education, job retraining, income insurance, wage insurance, even location reinsurance, to get the kind of jobs they need if they lose their jobs and if trade or technology displaces them.
You are a strong opponent of the Iraq War. Donald Trump has proclaimed, I guess, a kind of form of more neo-isolationist foreign policy. At least he's been highly critical of America's engagements in Afghanistan and Iraq. To what extent do you think who's ever the next president of the United States will have a real challenge in terms of America's relationship with the larger world based on, again, a large portion of your fellow citizens who seem very pessimistic, upset, angry about what they see as a kind of wasted lives, wasted treasure on the global stage?
Well, they have a complete right to be angry about Iraq and the war that George W. Bush and fellow Republicans pushed us into on false pretenses that destabilized the entire Middle East, and we're still living with that. And countless lives, American lives and the lives of many, many other people in the Middle East have been lost. But that's no argument for the United States disengaging from the rest of the world or becoming neo-isolationist or embarking upon saying to NATO, we are not going to be there for you unless you do X or Y or Z. But the United States has a role of leadership in this world. It's good for the rest of the world. It's good for the United States. It has not always been exercised properly. But without the United States, a dangerous world becomes much more dangerous.
And just finally, for Canadians who are trying to figure out the repercussions of this election, we are an exporting nation. Our connections vis-a-vis the United States economy are critical in terms of our economic prosperity. Should we be worried about a kind of closing of the American mind, so to speak? Is that a real potential, regardless of who wins come November?
I don't think it's a potential if Hillary Clinton wins. I think there are forces and subcurrents in the United States right now that are channeling the anger and desperation and anxiety, mostly economic, that many people feel toward a kind of scapegoating of foreigners, including other foreign nations. But I think that if we resume the long-term path of prosperity and global prosperity, and we make the changes that have to be made so that the economy works for everyone, not just in the United States, but that it is a positive-sum win-win game around the world, then I think a lot of these feelings will recede. So I guess my short answer is that Canada should be worried, and should certainly be worried if Donald Trump becomes president, but I don't think that will happen.
Great. Well, Robert Reich, we look forward to seeing you on the Munk Debate stage tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern. Thank you for coming to Toronto.
Thank you, Rupert.
Real pleasure to talk. That was Robert Reich. He'll be appearing on the Munk Debate stage, as I mentioned, 7 p.m. Eastern tonight. It's live on our website, www.munkdebates.com, which you're viewing this stream on right now, or on Facebook, on our Facebook page. Stay tuned. In a matter of moments, we've got our other debaters up. Jennifer Granholm, the former governor of Michigan State, Laura Ingraham, the talk radio doyenne, and former U.S. Speaker of the House of Representatives, Newt Gingrich, all in the next 45 minutes. Stay tuned for that. We'll be back to you momentarily.